Hi everyone, welcome to the video. Today I'm testing a Compaq Presario PC from 2006 that I bought at a car boot sale a couple of months ago for £5. I wanted to see what this PC can do in 2021. I'll be cleaning, installing, upgrading, benchmarking and gaming on this PC, but it wasn't without its problems along the way. The model of this PC is a SR 2019 UK Media Centre edition. It's a very smart PC with a stylish glossy front, expansion bays with storage card slots, USB, audio, Firewire, an Athlon 64 and Windows stickers. For rear I/O we have PS2, digital audio, a single VGA connector from onboard video, USB, Firewire and audio out. It's an AMD AM2 socket micro ATX board and doesn't seem to be proprietary. It has a GeForce 6150 LE chipset and this PC seems to be in the original configuration since bought. It has an AMD Athlon 3500 plus 2.2 GHz and yeah, it's a single core processor. It has 1GB of DDR2 533 MHz RAM and a 160GB hard drive. It supports AMD Sempron, Athlon and the dual core X2 and up to 4GB of RAM. It has IDE and SATA 1 at 1.5 gigabits a second and has one PCI generation 1 slot times 16 and also has 3 PCI slots. It also came with various pre-installed software. Just looking at the various models of the SR2000 series, there were 4 different boards. The first 3 supported similar Intel processors. The first board has the ATR Radeon Express 200 chipset with an iGPU. The second one has the Intel 965P chipset and has no integrated graphics. The third has the Intel 945G chipset with GMA 950 graphics. And the final one, which is what I have, AMD CPUs and the Nvidia chipset and the iGPU. Models had various RAM and hard drive configurations and had various different software that's shipped with them. Previous generations were quite similar too. Moving on, firstly taking the side panel off to have a look at the initial state of the PC. Yeah, it's not great. So time for cleaning. Now taking the cooler off. It took a while before eventually coming off the CPU, probably because it hasn't been changed at all. I unclipped the fan off the cooler so I'm able to get at the dust and clean it properly. What a mess. Yeah, I do clean it properly afterwards off camera. There we go, much better. Okay, I forgot to put the clip back in. So the first upgrade I'm going to do is replace the hard drive with an SSD. Taking out the hard drive required me to take off the front of the case and remove one of the hard drive screws. So here's the hard drive, probably the original one. I'm just going to place the SSD in the storage bay and not screw it in. With the cables plugged in, I refitted the front panel. With that done, it's time to turn on the PC for the first time. Yes, it works. Just to look at the DVD drive quickly, before I forget. I then checked the BIOS for memory and CPU details, as well as the BIOS version itself, which was 3.07. We had two PC2 4200 memory sticks in there, and the Athlon 64 3500 plus a 2.2 GHz. I did begin to install Windows, but decided to upgrade the RAM before continuing that. I've taken the old RAM out. By the way, dual channel for this Asus board requires sticks to be in consecutive slots, so it looks a bit weird, but it is in dual channel. So I installed two 2GB sticks of RAM for 4GB. This is PC 6400 RAM, and although the board states only PC 5300 is supported, it should be fine, but we'll see. I actually ended up with the RAM in the opposite two slots than originally because the PC would freeze at the Compaq logo, so it's still in dual channel. So with that sorted, it's on with the Windows 10 installation. Initially it was fine, but installation was really damn slow, even with an SSD, but it looked to be getting through it. But eventually we got an error. It seemed to be an error with setting up the keyboard layout, so I skipped it, then came to quite an unresponsive network connection page. This eventually led to another error, and it seemed to be a problem with setting up network settings. I skipped it again, continued with limited setup, then I got another error, which seemed to be an error with setting up the local account. And that one I couldn't skip, so I turned to Google for answers. I came across a Microsoft answer for someone with the same problem. I followed the instructions on how to fix it. I restarted the PC and opened command prompt with Shift F10 at the keyboard error screen. Then I typed in the command shown in the answer. Pressing enter on the last instruction led to a please wait screen that didn't go anywhere. So I rebooted the PC again. Got some password incorrect screen, but it let me continue anyway for some reason. It's looking promising now. I had the Windows installing messages as well. Okay, finally we're in at the desktop. This doesn't look right. The desktop's flickering. So I rebooted the PC again. It started to continue the setup where I was expecting to be after entering the commands. It seems to be on the right lines now. Will it flicker? No, the desktop works. Time to have a look at performance. So I looked at Task Manager and did some general PC usage. We were stuck at 100% CPU usage, which is not surprising. RAM is not an issue right now. After a while though, the CPU settled down, but anything I did caused the CPU to max out again, for example, opening Microsoft Edge. So then I had to look at CPU-Z for PC details. The RAM frequency is actually dynamic and can actually run near the rated 400 MHz speed. Then I carried out the CPU-Z stress test. It achieved around 70 points. So that was it for this CPU. I thought we're not going to get much working on this thing. So what can we upgrade it to? I looked at supported CPUs. The Athlon X2 5000 Plus looked to be the best option, and it's a dual core CPU. There are actually better ones like the 6000 Plus, but I wanted to ensure compatibility, but still this wasn't going to go smoothly either way. So on eBay they were going for around £9.50 total in the UK, or like £4.50 from China. I found one, which also came with a cooler, that I wouldn't be using in this case. Here it is. So cooler off again, and I swapped out the measly 2.2 GHz single core Athlon for the beastly dual core 2.6 GHz Athlon. I'm using some cheap thermal paste, but it should be fine. So I turned the PC on hoping it would work first time. It didn't. The fan was at max speed and the PC would eventually stop beeping at me. I tried a couple of ideas to get it to work. I tried swapping and moving the memory around. I even tried clearing the CMOS, but that didn't work. I was at the point of giving up. The only bit of hope now was a BIOS update. So I searched on Google, and although I couldn't find an official link to the BIOS, as the HP page for it has most likely been removed, someone had a link for it on the forum. So I put the old CPU back in, open the executable, and this will be updating the BIOS from version 3.07 to 3.10. This is scary stuff, as I don't want to break the PC. It's done. Time to reboot. I'm crossing my fingers now. Oh my gosh, it's booted. I was treated to a nice new logo as well. So I went in the BIOS and there it is. It's version 3.10. But we're only halfway there. So I reinstalled the new CPU and turned the PC on. Will it boot? Yes. There's the Compaq logo. It works. I couldn't believe my eyes. And here it is in the BIOS. The Athlon 64X2 5000 plus 2.6 GHz. Time to get testing finally. So I tested general PC usage again. And opening Microsoft Edge didn't cause the CPU to max out anymore. So now looking at CPU Z again, here's the CPU details. The stress test gave 184 points as opposed to the 70 points from before, more than double the performance, which kind of makes sense as it's got twice the number of cores at a higher frequency. Then I tried opening more applications. I had Windows Update in the background and I was browsing YouTube as well. It wasn't that pleasant of an experience, but it wasn't unusable, and it was a lot better than with the single core. We were also well within the 4GB memory capacity. So now let's see how well the integrated graphics perform while doing these tasks and gaming. So let's get the drivers installed. So the last driver was from 2015 and for Windows 7. Will it work on Windows 10? It installed flawlessly. Here it is in Device Manager and in the control panel. Now to look at GPU-Z for specs. It has a core clock of 425 MHz and shares its memory with the CPU and supports up to DirectX 9C. Okay, this is pretty bad. I tried general browsing and PC usage again. Scrolling was a lot more smooth, and although GPU usage was really high, I was really surprised on how well it performed. It was a great experience. So then just a last Windows update before we get on to testing the games. With that done, I tested Turbo Dismount and GTA San Andreas, as they're both DirectX 9 games and should work. So Turbo Dismount. Okay, this game actually worked and was just playable at the lowest settings of 640 by 480 resolution. 720p however was kind of not playable. Then I found out MSI Afterburner worked with this GPU and allowed me to overclock the core from 425 to 555 MHz. This gained me an extra 1 to 2 FPS. Not bad. Now for GTA San Andreas. Medium settings and 640 by 480 resolution to start with. This was actually moderately playable. There's a lot of FPS fluctuation, but we're getting nearly 30 FPS average. CPU usage was fine, and we were definitely GPU bottlenecks, although MSI Afterburner doesn't show usage. Also RAM capacity wasn't a problem. 800 by 600 next. Playable to some maybe. So 720p now. Initially it was fine, but particle effects on screen would make FPS drop to the tens and single digits. FPS was also quite variable.
What the fuck's name are you doing?
Okay, it's actually a bit better now in this scene. So 1080p next. Why not test it? This is why. Single digit FPS and very slow. But knowing there's no dedicated GPU installed yet makes it not seem as bad, to be honest. .720p again quickly. See, it's performing a lot better here as there's less scenery to render. I also added this clip because I thought it was quite funny. I don't know what this guy's doing. He just drowned himself. That dragged on a bit. Now it's time to install a dedicated GPU. Just getting the drivers. This is my GTX 750 Ti, which doesn't require a power connector. The PSU should be able to handle it with its 19 amps on a 12 volt rail. Let's install the drivers. Again, that worked flawlessly. Restarting the PC, just having a look at the loading time. It's pretty bad, it's at least 4.5 minutes. For the final time I tested general PC usage. The PC was now at its best. It's really snappy and now visuals are really smooth. Now to see what this CPU can really do when it comes to gaming. Turbo Dismount again. With this game it was a huge improvement. 720p was great and rarely dropped from 60 FPS. At 1080p max settings, it was actually playable and quite an enjoyable experience. Sudden collisions would cause FPS drops to the 30s and 40s, otherwise it was almost 60 FPS and a really good result. GTA San Andreas, straight in at 1080p, medium settings, the game played amazingly. The GPU was cruising along while the CPU had its work cut out for it. It was keeping FPS between 45 to 60 and sometimes went above. It was an amazing experience and I was really surprised at the performance.
I need this more than you, I think. What the fuck's name are you doing? Look where you going, you idiot! Look where you going. Damn. That's very kind of you.
Changing to 640 by 480, not that there was any point, made little to no difference whatsoever. True of a CPU bottleneck system.
Oh, you hit me.
Later on, looking across the sea, we were hitting almost 100 FPS, and the same for 1080p too. So Cinebench R15 next. I waited for the CPU to chill out a bit in Task Manager before starting the test. It took so long that I had to swap cameras for a bit because it ran out of storage. Now for a cup of tea, and it's done. 87 points, that's terrible. Now for Cinebench R20. Okay, I'm joking. Time to test Fortnite. This is one of my main objectives to get it working. I just wanted to see it load at least. Okay, we have the intro to season 9, we'll skip that. Oh my gosh, we're in the lobby. Eventually, we were able to use emotes. And then I started a game in creative. Will it work? We're using the lowest settings in performance mode at 1080p, by the way. Performance was pretty bad at first, but once loaded in it was semi-playable. It was now consistently bad, which was an improvement from the seconds long stuttering from before. Also, the fact that I'm terrible at the game doesn't help performance look any better. I want to get this shot in, you know. Now testing an actual game. Yeah, it's not pretty. It takes a while to load stuff in. The 4GB of RAM is definitely holding us back, as well as the CPU itself. It uses about 3.6GB. There's constant freezing, but eventually it worked a bit better, until we got into a fight. It froze for seconds and then I was dead. No. The second game actually started great, with no freezes until I got near the ground. Textures weren't fully loaded, and I don't think they ever loaded in, and there were more freezes. Almost got a kill. I had a quick look at temperatures. They were not great, but okay. The next 4 games after that went progressively worse. The third game was actually okay, but the last 2 were insanely bad. Maybe something was overheating, because CPU temps were close to the limit. Finally, I tested 720p. Now, as this PC is CPU bottlenecked, lowering the resolution probably wasn't going to do much, and it didn't, really. Textures barely loaded again, but it ran okay. I moved to another area. There was freezing again, textures weren't loading properly, they barely loaded around me as I played, then I died. That's it for Fortnite. Can it run CRYSIS? Yes. At medium settings at 1080p it was a nice cinematic experience.
Intel reports a significant military presence on the island. We have the element of surprise. See you guys at the LZ.
Initially we were getting almost 60 FPS, but during normal gameplay we were sitting at averagely the mid-20s, with combat and explosions causing it to dip to the mid-teens, but didn't even feel that bad. Maybe lowering some of the settings could have helped achieve 30 FPS more at the time, but it was actually quite fun to play like this.
Stay focused. We got limited intel going in. Our comms being moved to USS Constitution. So they're 5x5. We're on our own. Troops are by command. Go! What the hell?
suit's gone. My damn suit is gone. I've got no pain, no reserve.
Keep it together, kid. You're overwater. The suit should absorb the impact. No, man. What's your status?
I'm okay. I'm okay. My HUD scrambled. What the hell was that?
I don't know, but you missed the LZ. Make your way to the beach.
On my way.
Careful, man. Enemy contact up ahead.
Minecraft. I'm just downloading Minecraft from the Microsoft Store first. I'm using GeForce Experience for the on-screen data. This game ran very well at max settings. This is the kind of PC that you might see advertised on eBay as a Minecraft gaming PC, because it's literally bare minimum and a cheap PC, and can't really play more modern AAA titles. flying around was also surprisingly smooth, and RAM capacity wasn't a problem. Before testing Just Cause 2, I decided to change the cooler to one which came with my Phenom 2 CPU. It's a chunky 125 watt cooler with a copper base and heat pipes, so it should do more for cooling the 65 watt chip than the aluminium original one. It is louder, but it's a brute force type cooler and it gets the job done. So Just Cause 2, max settings at 1080p, it was actually an okay experience. There was a lot of hitching as shown by the 1% and 0.1% low values, but it was playable. Medium to low settings was more responsive, but honestly didn't perform much better than max settings, most likely as it's a CPU bottleneck system. Temperatures were okay, but could be better. Okay, CSGO. I tested this at 1080p at medium settings. Firstly, I played the game with bots. Quickly, before continuing to test that, I decided to use the program Speedfan to control CPU fan speed, because I saw that temperatures were still on the upper end of the limit. Although the motherboard does eventually ramp up the fan speed and the cooler is more than capable of it, it does so when temperatures are too high. So I set a higher fan speed. It'll sound like a jet engine now though, but temperatures will be well within the limit. Listen to this. Okay, the FPS is shown on the top left. Basically, red means below 30 FPS, yellow 30 to 60 FPS, and green is at least 60 FPS, but we don't see that one. Okay, now playing an online game. It was barely playable. When respawning, there'd be a period of lag, then it would be a bit better. You can assume that I die many times in between the clips. Look at the temperatures, they didn't go past 58 degrees Celsius now. So with the final game tested, that's it. So I'll turn the PC off. The cooler's pretty damn hot, but that's good, it means it's doing its job. Now that brings us to the end of the video. So the conclusion. It was fun playing around with this PC, refurbishing, upgrading. We brought almost the max performance it had to offer, with its SSD, dual-core CPU and RAM upgrades. Once set up, it was actually okay for general PC usage in Windows 10, when not doing many background tasks. You can write Word documents, emails, watch YouTube, etc. and even do a fair bit of old gaming. The integrated graphics provided smooth visuals, making using this PC an enjoyable experience. Installing a GPU, however, unlocked more gaming performance, allowing us to play DirectX 10 games and above. The 4GB of RAM barely held us back actually. The only games tested that needed more RAM was Fortnite and CSGO, but at that point the CPU was the limit anyway. It actually performed beyond my expectations. You could basically get away with this as a daily driver home PC in 2021, which is what it was intended for anyway back when it was released in 2006. The fact that it managed to hold up today was amazing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was a pretty damn long one, and if you're still here, well done for making it this far. Please leave a like, comment, and if you like my content, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, bye.